Dreams are the voice of the unknown that ever threatens with new schemes, new dangers, sacrifices, warfare, and other troublesome things. Carl Gustav Jung, Psychology and Religion. Sounds to me like a really good solo role-playing game. Damn, that was a good intro. I'm going to play the intro again just because that was so good. Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Gustav Manalone, and we're going to talk about the one book that your solo RPG doctor doesn't want you to read. It is actually not Psychology and Religion, although Psychology and Religion is a good one. I'm moving right now, so my other Jung books are bagged up presently. This one was luckily, mercifully on the top of a box. But what I actually intended to talk about was, well, first of all, Man and His Symbols, which is the last book that Jung ever wrote collaboratively with 4 other people. It's always attributed completely to Jung, but it was Marie von Franz who translated it, put it all together, and authored one of the sections. But I wanted to talk about Jung for a couple of reasons. Number one, I put up a poll the other day saying which of my other interests would people care to hear about in videos. And I was surprised that the 2 winners were Jung and Eldritch horror, which I very much enjoy Eldritch horror and weird fiction. And so I'll think about those. I am also thinking about whether if I do want to discuss those things on this channel, or if I maybe down the line want to make its own channel. But I did want to talk a little bit about Jung just because I think this is not too much of a stretch to say that reading Jung, specifically his Red Book, Liber Novus, was probably my first oblique interaction or interface with what eventually became solo role-playing. I think that Jung articulates something that I try to articulate a lot in my videos. And I think it's worth talking about because I think that sometimes when I talk about the ways in which ideas are generated and having trust in yourself and having trust in the ideas that you present, sometimes I feel as though I'm speaking a different language. Because I always feel when I'm talking about that stuff that I'm speaking in a way that makes sense to me, but that I'm also trying to like sort of put a fart in a jar. Why couldn't I have thought of anything more elegant? Oh God. Now I'm just going to keep recording. A vapor in a bag, shall we say. I'm trying to, really explain a concept that is quite abstract. I mean, it's the most abstract concept, which is the subconscious, which I believe is, the source, not only the source of what we draw from in our solo role-playing sessions as inputs, but also, I think this is a ride that you may only go halfway with me on, but I feel like it's where we draw a lot of inspiration for our solo role-playing. I feel it's the reason that our solo role-playing and solo sessions are meaningful and healthy. And because of my syncretic religious views, I believe that when we solo roleplay, we are doing what Jung called active imagination, and we are actually feeding into the collective unconscious. So I believe that I know that there's no easy way to say this without making me sound a certain kind of way, but I think it's okay. I really do think that when we lower ourselves into the subconscious and pull things out of it, even when we're playing solo role playing by ourselves, we are participating in the collective unconscious. And I think it's extremely important work. And Jung wrote the Red Book, or I should say, wrote and drew the Red Book. And I have a couple, if you've never heard of the Red Book, Liber Novus, which means new book. It's called the Red Book because it's bound in red. And it was not really fully released for some time after his death, because what the Red Book was Jung's this 4-year period, that 3 or 4 years around World War I, when right after Jung and Freud kind of went their separate ways ideologically, Jung went into this deeply internal state, reflective state. And during the day, he would conduct his life just like normal. But then at night, Jung would sit alone and do this active imagination, this attempt to bridge the conscious and unconscious mind without limitation, without trying to direct the unconscious mind, allowing the unconscious mind to unfold itself, to explain itself. And that's what Jung would really look for. Is he would say that he would encounter these figures in his unconscious mind, and he would not stop talking to them until they were able to explain what they were doing there. So let's just take back up a little bit, okay? I have to assume, well, I don't have to assume, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows what the hell I'm talking about. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and he was just a prolific writer, thinker, through most of his career. Even during this very difficult time for him, he was seeing tons of patients, doing research, lecturing, and he was, sort of a student and acolyte of Freud. But they began to have a division ideologically, because Freud reduced most of what drives human nature to these libidinal drives, which normally a lot of people would say are sort of psychosexual drives, but Jung would agree with the idea of libido, right? But would say that libido is not just a sexual drive, it's a life drive. It's a drive towards wanting to experience a vivid life, to indulge in fascinations, and to become one's full potential. It's this appetite for life, okay? And we have to remember that, a lot of people shit on Freud, but it's, as the saying goes, it's easy to feel tall when you stand on the shoulders of giants. And I mean, what I think a lot of people don't think about Freud, and by extension Jung, is before Freud, like, the idea of psychiatry did not exist. The idea of sitting there talking to somebody did not exist. Now, we could probably have a healthy, spirited discussion. I doubt I would argue with you about the implications of psychology, especially what it has become today in the manifestation of sort of positive psychology, in which I feel this is the industry of basically paying somebody to justify all of your choices, whether they're shitty or not. But the original idea is that there is this unconscious mind, and this is second nature to us. This is a concept that is introduced to us in the modern world very early in our lives in very simple terms. And as we get older, we learn certain things that we all take for granted, such that you have these drives and motivations that are guiding your choices and your actions, that you are not fully aware of them, that if you try to repress them, they grow stronger. Even things that you feel are accidental or unconscious may have these, or I shouldn't say unconscious, even these things you feel are accidental or unintended may have these, be related to these unconscious drives. And so, the top people were a pretty small group, and Jung was born in 1875. 1870. Let me just look at it. 1875. Yep. And what Jung would talk about more than anything, Jung gets brought up now, talk a lot about these archetypes, right? These symbols or these images that transcend culture or time, that they are deeply embedded gestalt images that are held in people's minds that have universal meanings, right? But really what Jung talked about a lot was individuation. And this is the process that a person becomes themselves. I think one of my favorite David Foster Wallace quotes is like, I'm butchering it, but it's something like, and eventually in the end, eventually you become yourself. Right. And this process of individuation, Jung saw this as the work of being human was to integrate conscious, unconscious elements, not necessarily to wrangle the unconscious side of yourself, which Jung sometimes referred to as the shadow, but to make peace with it, to understand the boundaries around it, right? And so, but I think more than individual ideas, Jung and Freud differentiated on the fact that Jung greatly allowed for there to be an element of spirituality, spiritualism, mysticism, supernatural in psychology, because he really did see the mechanisms of the human mind as magical. I think would be safe and respectful to say. So I think because of this, I'm not saying that like all people in the world are divided along like you're either a Freudian or a Jungian. I think most people are, I don't give a shittian, but like, I will say that if you are a person that staunchly rejects a sort of spiritual or mystical notion of your life, you should just unsubscribe. No, I'm just kidding. Do not unsubscribe. I shouldn't say shit like that. If you are a person that does not have those leanings, I think there's still a lot of worth to reading Jung. And for me, I was that person. I did not have any sort of spiritual aspect of my life until I had these experiences that had no other explanation than sort of an interface with something divine. And my spirituality is a very private one, and I don't care to elucidate it in, extensively. But I think that over time, as that piece of me opened more, I was able to understand Jung a lot better. And so how am I going to relate this to solo role playing? Joke's on you, I'm not. Thanks for the views. No. I want you to do, if you'll indulge me, and let me just say, if you do this, I really appreciate it, because I'm the kind of person that will get like a self-help workbook and it'll say, pause for a minute and write down 3 things you're grateful for. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Parents, peanut butter, tuna sandwiches. But if you could, go ahead and set a timer for 2 minutes and pause the video. And I want you to tell me, write down as many things that you could make, and they can be ridiculous. They can make sense. They can be actually useful, but like contraptions, mechanisms, things that you can make if you were given a blanket and a brick. Any kind of blanket and brick. Like think in your mind of a blanket of a certain length and certain tests, and then a brick. And go ahead and pause and take 2 minutes and just write down ideas. And they can be, like I said, ridiculous. Try your best. Okay, go. Okay, so here were some that I came up with. A fishing pole for masons, like you're actually fishing for masons or construction workers by lowering a brick and seeing who you catch. An extremely deadly but inaccurate slingshot. A very disappointing gift wrapped in very disappointing wrapping paper. Like you give it to somebody and you're like, here, I made this for you, and it's wrapped in a blanket, and then they open it and it's a brick. A piece of exercise equipment that you tie around your head to flex your neck. That one I feel like needs a little bit of explaining, but I do remember seeing somebody at a gym one time that had, if this was like the head, they were quite muscle bound, I remember, and they had on the top of their head, it was like a leather thing that fit over their head. Yeah, it looked like that. And on the side of it was these 2 like loops, metal loops. And then there was a chain. Yeah, I think this is right. There was a chain that was looped around the middle of like a 45-pound weight. And they were just like, ah, and like moving their head down and then back. So I thought, well, you could just kind of substitute that with, a blanket right here. And then you just sort of wrap up the brick a little bit. And there you have it. Anyways, if you care to, you can write any that I didn't think of in the comments. So that is an example of divergent thinking, right? You start with these two objects of a blanket plus a brick, and from that you create these different, different ideas. And we do this in solo role playing. We also converge, right? So if I told you something that had to do with water, plastic, and a whistle. Okay, how about at the top of a water slide, the lifeguard with like the little whistle? If you ever been on a water slide like that. Oh, that's kind of fun, right? Is that how you draw water? I don't know. Yeah, so you got some guy at the top named like Chet Spasman, right? Wearing like these sunglasses, and he's just got like the whistle dangling if anyone is running or whatever. Whatever it is. So this is the kind of work that we do when we're solo role playing, is we get these inputs, which are usually quite vague. And these vague inputs, we then run them through divergent or convergent processes. And we create new realities. And sometimes they're very tightly related, right? So if I said, wood, mouse, dairy, you'd be like mousetrap, right? And sometimes they can be very loose. So if I was like hard candy and a yacht, well, hard candy and a yacht, maybe we can say, you might have already gotten that one, a lifesaver. Lifesaver is candy, and you're drowning on a yacht and somebody throws out the lifesaver to the person who is in the water, right? Splashing about. They fell off the yacht because they're having a martini and they thought they were feeling fancy. And like most people who drink a martini for the first time, they were said, yuck. And they yucked so loud that they just fell off the side of the yacht with, martini flying. The martini glass went flying, right? And the lifesaver had to be thrown. And so, yes, that is far more distant. And I think that it is a sign that you are developing your solo role-playing skills, the wider of the gulf between the ideas that you have. I should have gotten some sort of randomizer, but if you wanted to play this game a little bit, let me throw a couple of things, like the first things that are coming to my mind. The Sahara Desert and Seinfeld. And let's say tennis and let's go Herodotus. And then we'll do Philip Seymour Hoffman and wait, don't tell me, or maybe Weight Watchers, which is now called WW because you're not supposed to watch weight anymore. You're supposed to look away. I don't know. I mean, I think we can pick through those, but just, think about that. There are these relationships between those things, and we have to do a little bit of legwork to figure that out. And so how do we get good at that? Well, obviously the brain is like anything else, is muscle memory, and reps, right? So the more often that we play, the more vivid of scenes we're able to derive from very low levels of inputs. And as we develop this skill more, the looseness of associations that we're able to play with become wider. We're able to bridge wider gaps. And then also the divergence from like a simple idea into many other ideas, it's going to be more fecund. It's going to create tons and tons of possibilities. And that is why I focus so much on tables, and just having background lore at the beginning, and then just tables having inputs rather than tables having extensive information, because my mind wants to play with the ball. Okay. So if you are like, if you go to a little kid and you say, "Hey, here, I got you this this nice bouncy ball here. Don't you want to play with the nice bouncy ball?" And the kid's gonna go, "Oh yeah, it looks fun, right?" And in scenario one, we say, "Okay, well, this bouncy ball is a polymer, and it actually it had to go through a process of vulcanization, and it is inflated with probably 12 psi of pressure. And if you look right here, there's these micro grooves, and those are really nice. The rubber has a negative taste, so you don't want to eat that. And right here is like the little hatch that you can put the needle in to inflate it." Okay, that's scenario one. Scenario two is they say, "Here's a nice red ball. Go play with it." And so I did have a comment yesterday where, because I was ripping on the D&D lore, or the D&D Game Master's Guide, and just talking about like the inflation of information in there. And I just want to say, like, totally understand where that commenter was coming from, because they were like, "This seems like man yells at cloud," when it's like, okay, so you like having all these tables in one book, but when the tables are in two books, or the tables are more expansive, you don't like that. And my answer to that is correct. I don't need you to explain what the amulet does. I want to figure that out. I want you to plant the seed for me, and I want to grow it. That is far more satisfying to just give me the ball and let me dribble it than it is to teach me all about the ball. I don't care. Give me the ball. I will create it. I also had someone who, and I really do apologize if I sometimes miss responding to comments. I try my best to respond to a lot of comments, but sometimes I'm just not able to catch up. But I do want to say, this comment was about, how do you solo play a campaign where you know what's going to happen in the campaign? And my answer to that, I think, is disappointing to some people. But I think if you've soloed for a long enough time, my answer to that is read the campaign, go through it, and say, okay, that's like the beats of the campaign. That's how the campaign's supposed to go. So you know the beats. And then create a new campaign out of that. Salvage that stuff to create a new campaign. Because the ideas presented in the book, you have access to the same level of interesting ideas. In fact, you have more immediate access to your own subconscious, and you're able to draw from that. Okay, so at this point, if this is sounding like a little bit of woojie navel gazing, I want to talk about Liber Novus, okay, the red book. And I think this will put things together. Now, let's see. Okay, so here's like some picture. Oh, this is going way too fast. I said for it to go 7,000. Oh, good. Okay. So these are some pages from the red book, and the copy that I had, I was not able to buy it. The cheapest I see is for 97 Canadian dollars right now. But I did get it from the library at one point. It's a huge book, like huge. Like if I were to put it here, it would take up this whole screen. And these pages are written with this like very, like that calligraphy almost looks, like a 9th century monk. And it does also, in case you're a classics geek, it does have quotes from the Vulgate, which is the Latin translation of the Bible by Saint Jerome in 4th century. I think it was like 324 AD. Jerome translated the Bible to Latin, and it is called the Vulgate, which was officially accepted at the Council of Trent. And Trent, by the way, is doing well. He lives in Sarasota. But yeah, so these vivid, extremely vivid pictures that Jung would draw in the Red Book was this work that he would do every night, where he would encounter his unconscious. And he said later that those 4 years where he was doing that was the most difficult work of his life. But once he did it, he knew what his life was supposed to be. And he said everything past that point, that those 4 years were the most important time of my life, and that everything beyond that point was just an extension and an articulation of the things that the work that he did during that active imagination. So, without getting too personal, I was an analyse for a year. I went 5 days a week to be analyzed. Luckily, I did not pay for this. It was part of a student program. And I am still a bit ambivalent about the enduring value of that. It definitely had value, but I just wonder, like, in terms of like how much time I spent doing that versus the value. I really shouldn't think like that, actually, but well, maybe I need to go back for a couple thousand more sessions. But during this time in my life, I was very interested in developing an understanding of why certain things kept happening to me in my life, right? And so if you're a person that meets the same type of people, whether like friends or romantically, or like you are somebody who gets in the same type of arguments over and over again with your parents or your partner or whatever, and you want to say, like, why does this keep happening? What is it about me, right? If you're someone that gets taken advantage of, if you're someone that takes advantage of people, if you have a certain level of frustration that you could tolerate before you start bullying people and you're very ashamed of that or whatever. I had these behaviors where when I would walk up to people on the street, I would keep pinching their nose. No, I'm just kidding. That would be awesome if that was the issue. I can't stop doing the nose pinch, and I make the sound. I go, ha, ha. If that's your problem, I'll do your analysis, because I think it's subconsciously you want to go to clown school. Okay, so I started, looking into these pathways that we have for our subconscious mind. And there are a couple of pathways for that, right? And some of them are illegal. So I'll say no more about that. Prayer, meditation, dreams, and active imagination. And I would do all of the above. And I just wanted to, I went through, and I'm going to bring up one of my dreams here. And let me just, for 1 second, I just want to read it over to make sure it doesn't have any like names of anyone in it. 1 second. Okay, I've removed all the names except David Bowie. So I'm not going to exhaustively read this entire dream. But this was every time I would wake up from a dream, I would immediately write down the dream. And in this one, I met person. Oh, let's go back up. So I'm not going to exhaustively. I walk into a large glass building with my friend X to meet Y, who was excited because it was both my birthday and the first time I would be doing assistive dreaming. I met Y in the lobby. They greeted me, told me happy birthday, and they said, "Oh, we're going to go to Translucent. This is an expensive restaurant." And so I said, "Great." And then I'm being whisked away on a gurney to an operating room. So I'm like, "Oh, this is an interesting restaurant." And Y was there, told me to stay calm. And this was actually this psychoanalyst that I was working with. And this is going to feel like nothing you've ever felt before. And I was really confused. They start doing this intravenous fluids, and I'm going, whoa, I thought we were going to a restaurant or like a retreat or something. It says, no, this is going to be great. You're going to love it. Now I wake up, I'm in the OR, but it's different. It has that quality of dreams where if you've ever had this thing where it's like you're in your house, but it's not your house, or like you're in another house, but it's your house. You somehow know that. That sort of like way that dreams have to sort of like bend reality a little bit, to sort of slant reality just so. So I'm no longer held down by lines or cords or restraints. I stand up, I walk around, and the psychoanalyst voice comes over the speaker and says, relax, you're in the other place now. Take a second to get oriented. And I said, I just love this part. I'm not sure this has any deeper meaning, but I said, oh, my nose is so stuffed. I love this logic right here. They get back on the speaker. They go, you can't blow your nose because because of the physics of this space, there are certain things that affect you on the other side. So remember, you're asleep and on oxygen. So if you blow your nose here, it'll blow the oxygen tubes out of your nose IRL, which I just love that. That's so cool. I might use that in a book once. And then I said, well, my nose feels stuff. And they go, well, try to think about why that bothers you and then what it means to be bothered, which I really love that. So I go out to the lobby, my nose is bothering me less, and all of a sudden I say, wait, there's this group of people, and I didn't know them. And I said, who are they? They said, oh, those are the strangers. And I go, that doesn't sound very good. I better get the hell out of here. And the voice comes back on and says, no, these are strangers. They're the strangers. You need to make sure you let them know that you care about them. And so I go up to the strangers, and they are so nice, and they're so welcoming. And they say, oh, you know what? We're going to stay with you. And so to make you feel normal, because there was a group of about 4 of them. They said, so when you're walking around this weird place, just stay with us and we'll act like you're your best friends. We're your best friends. And so you don't have to feel like weird or out of place. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to have a group do this if I was feeling uncomfortable. So I'm looking around. It's like a Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. There's just so many delights for the eyes to see. And as I'm passing people, they're all going, oh, you're so brave. And if you feel afraid, just tell me, I'll hold your hand. I like this one. I think you wonder if people are attracted by you when you look serious. And I assure you, they definitely do. We won't abandon you. If anyone asks who you are, we're just going to tell them you're incredible, one of a kind. And all of a sudden, these strangers, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky to have friends like this. And at that moment, I thought about this other person X who is my actual best friend in life. And I'm like, oh yeah, like everything I have in this place is what I have in real life. And I don't really see my friends for how they are, these sort of mystical, I guess you might say, spirits, because, it's cloaked in the meaning of everyday life. So then 4 cars whiz by, 2 red and blue, and they say, oh, here come the drivers. And they are coming real fast overhead. And they said, you better wave at them. And they're headed right towards me. And so I'm like, oh, shit. And I raise a hand and I wave at them. And the second I wave at them, the whole feel of them changed. They're still driving, but they were doing sort of a synchronized swim, that they were not threatening at all. And I realized that this, place is really like a big shopping mall, Mall of America. If you live in the U.S., it's this enormous mall in Minnesota. So then we go to a corner. I promise it's almost done. In the corner is a movie screen just showing scenes from my youth. And some of them are really sad and lonely. Others were fun, heroic. And there were 3 or 4 rows of seats with people watching and reacting like as if they were so gripped by the movie. And one of them turns to me and says, I'm so glad all this happened to you. And suddenly the hospital got dark, no longer illuminated by natural light, but instead a cool blue light that seemed to emanate from the base of the walls where they met the floor. Everything was the same, but it had a cooler or more neon chilled effect. I started to get worried because it feels a little scary. And my friend says, it's time for the shadow to come out. But don't worry, the shadow seems really scary, but you'll see it has a magic of its own. I walked down a hallway, same hallway I came from earlier, all the same furniture, and all the characters who are there. However, there's this like wonky vibe. I said, like the Island of Misfit Toys. They were all lined up in front of a stage waiting for someone to appear. So that their physics, their structure was a little like disproportionate. It was a little menacing. Purple smoke begins to fill the room and the lights on the stage flash purple and white and green. And out from the stage, My psychoanalyst comes. He's wearing a purple suit, and his face was painted white with black lines over his mouth and his eyes. It was like he wore this costume before, that I had seen him wear this in real life at a Halloween party, but this time I understood what it was. This was the shadow form of why. It almost frightened me like the unsettling look out of a Tim Burton movie. And I realized that this was his shadow projected outwards. And I've mentioned shadow a couple times. I'll explain a little bit more about that. That's not what this video is about, but it's an important piece of the Jungian. And he's like dressed like a carnival barker with a big top hat, and says, "Oh, we have someone new here. They're a new performer, really talented performer, but he's hiding his act." And all of a sudden I realize, oh man, they're talking about me. And I get on stage and I look, and there's a jumbotron showing my face, and suddenly my face is white with painted white with a sparkling green shamrock painted over one of my eyes. I look like an Irish David Bowie. I looked amazing. So then my psychoanalyst leans to me and says, "Are you ready to take the mic from me?" And I look at the crowd. They all love me. Leans the mic in front of my face. I said, "Yes." They all rose to their feet, raised their hands in a unified roaring cheer. "Then it looks like you are born again," he said. Okay. And it's kind of cut off here, but it says, "Immediately I got sucked back up into the void. It was hot and tight and uncomfortable. I was sticky, and I could feel my warm breath projecting up and then falling on my face again. I calmed down as I realized I was waking up from this procedure. It just felt like I was emerging from a birth canal. I woke up laughing hysterically, and then I realized all these nurses," there we go, let me try this. "All the nurses around me were the strangers." So my mind had just put them into this dream, right? Well, this dream in a dream, I suppose. Why I left, because I was under for 3 hours. There's a carnival going on outside. Your friend X is there. I put on pants and proceeded to the door. I turned the handle and I woke up. All right. Why did I just tell you all that? Because as I look through this diary, I underlined some things. Okay. Glass building, translucent. Let's see here. Strangers, shadow. These 4 cars, 2 red and 2 blue. Here come the drivers. So we have the drivers, the strangers, and the shadow. There's a movie screen. It's a hospital. It's a hallway, misfit toys, purple smoke, carnival barker, and a green shamrock painted over my eye. So what the hell does all of this mean? Well, as I thought about this dream, I realized a couple of things. This restaurant's called Translucent, and I'm in this sort of glass case almost. And so obviously, this whole thing, I'm brought up on the stage at the end. I'm very worried about being revealed, about people seeing me. Okay. That I'm what's the word? I'm worried about being exposed. And then we have these strangers, these people who I haven't met, but they're very kind. And then there's these cars driving around that are red and blue, and I'm able to halt them with my hand. Okay. And then we have the psychoanalyst come out with this purple suit on, and there's this purple smoke billowing out for like special effects, and it looks really menacing. And then at the very end, I have this green shamrock painted over my eye, like the sign of luck. And I then, before I wake up, they said, "Great. So it looks like you're born again." And then I come out of it, and it's like I'm coming out of a birth canal. So if you remember from the beginning, in this dream, it was my birthday. Okay. And because of this theme of rebirth, theme of being reborn, these cars are driving fast. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of cars. I'm not afraid of driving. But then I said, oh, those cars were red and blue. The combination of red and blue is purple. Okay. And we have this notion of like this alternate version of people that is purple. And it's sort of this integration of who they are on the inside and the outside. And what I'm worried about, if we think of like red and blue, serving as inside and outside, then purple would be the combination of that, which is inside and outside. Okay. So what this really, in the way that I look back at this dream was really about this fear of exposure, this fear of people seeing who I really am, afraid of who I am on the inside and outside crashing into one another, and then going on this stage and feeling nothing but support and love and feeling lucky, literally, to have a shamrock on my face for what I have. And it's my birthday. And at the end, I emerge from this birth canal. Okay. So how does this mean anything? You could say I gave that meaning. I took all of this nonsense and I filtered it through myself, and I came up with an explanation. Okay. Well, yes. And you know what else is like that? Every day of your life that you walk around and look at all of the confusion, madness, chaos. And, again, Jung wrote this red book while World War I was happening. And I think what I have a hard time with, and one of the reasons that I, sometimes you could say retreat into solo gaming, is because I do get nervous about, the state of the world. And I feel like there are some unraveling. The falconer can no longer hear the falcon. And I think, though, that I'm sure that the outbreak of World War I, that people felt, much worse than that. I mean, for as confusing as things are, I can't say that people were like withstanding mustard gas while making TikTok videos or whatever. But there's this hallway that shows up in this dream, this transition, which is similar to like the birth canal, this transition. Okay. So, shadow. So basically, brief overview of a shadow. And I promise we're going to bring this to solo role playing. The shadow, Jung would say, is a part of ourselves that is very much a true desire, our libido, in terms of like our life force. And at some point very early in our lives, we show this part of ourselves, and we're so innocent. We don't know that it is bad. We don't know anything. It's just who we are, right? We could be a little baby, a little kid, and we show this part of ourselves, and we get some sort of feedback that humiliates us, shames us, embarrasses us, hurts us. And so what we do, because that threat is very overwhelming, we hide that piece of ourselves in the basement, our subconscious. And we say, wow, I can't ever let anybody see that. I need to make sure that is hidden away. And that's where we form our persona. That's who we appear to people in the outside world. And the shadow lurks in this basement. But the longer that it lurks down there, it grows monstrous, right? And when the door to the basement is weakened, that's when it comes out. So if people are sad, or they're drunk, or they're on drugs, or they've been victimized or something, the shadow piece of themselves can come out. And this is when people might say, geez, I've never seen you like that before. Well, it's because the shadow has been separated, and we grow more and more scared of this shadow. And we forget that it's not a monster. It's this piece of ourselves, very innocent piece of ourselves. And what Jung would say is we're not going to be at our full power as a human until our persona, our external self, and our shadow make peace. It's not about dominating the shadow. It's about saying, you're okay. You're a part of me. And until you integrate that, you're not at your full potential. Okay. But what is actually most significant about this, I would say, in terms of implications for my life, is that this phrase really stuck out to me, assistive dreaming. And I started reading and looking, and that's how I came across active imagination. It was that association of like Google searches and stuff that I found this. And I started doing this process of active imagination. And I still remember the first time that I like successfully bridged the gap between my conscious and unconscious mind. I was walking in a grassy valley. It was nice and bright and sunny, and I saw a knight. And I didn't feel scared of the knight. And I walked up to the knight and I said, "Hey, are you from here?" And he said, "Yep." And he said, I just want to thank you. You know, you made this place for me. It's really nice. I'm able to be a really good knight. I'm able to be valiant, and I'm able to fight a lot of battles, and it's really exciting. And I said, oh, that's so good to hear. And he said, you know, I just have one request. Could you turn off the sun sometimes? It's so bright, and it's never nighttime here. And I was like, well, why do you want it to be night? I mean, wouldn't you rather just have this like bright sun? I mean, if you want to sleep, you can go in shade under a tree. And he was like, no. There's no trees. There's no shade. You don't let any darkness in here. And I woke up and I felt sick. Not because of what was said, but because I had never kind of been to that level of unrestrained unconsciousness. And I think a lot of time when we do visualization, we kind of like try to direct it. We want there to be peaceful thoughts. If you go on YouTube and you're like, sleep meditation, you know, it's talking about clouds and banana pudding and friendly lizards flicking a little candy tongue on your head. But if you want to encounter your subconscious, you just let it happen. Okay. So this, in my mind, is the ultimate goal of solo role playing. Is don't tell the knight what to do. Let that knight tell you what they want to do, and trust it. Okay? Trust it. Trust that there is going to be a story that makes sense. Okay? Because if we say, you know, we have this very gallant knight and they're very powerful, and the whole town is counting on them to really slay this monster. And you look at your stats and you say, I can do this. This is great. Yeah, I'm going to enter this battle. And you take your most powerful weapon and you swing and miss with a crit fail and fall on your ass. You have this temptation to be like, okay, well, let me kind of fudge this or whatever. But let that happen. Let your knight that you thought was so OP and so powerful and so skilled and heroic, let them fail. Let them humiliate themselves. When you let go of the story you're actively trying to create and let the story create itself, you are then going to really understand the delight of solo role playing. One of the reasons why I think people don't understand and enjoy solo role playing is because they go, well, what's the point of this? I write, I have a level 5 rogue and I want them to go fight this guy. And I fought a guy. He's done. The giant bat or whatever is dead. What the hell is the point of that? Well, you just worked in a linear fashion, decided you wanted to do something and then do it. So yes, I understand why you didn't like that, because that's the same as me like saying, oh, I have a game. The game is that we imagine a really fast car and then we drive it around the track and it gets first place. Sucks. Story sucks, right? We want to see a path to that first place, or they do get first place. What does that mean? What do they have to sacrifice to get first place? Is this really the hero, or maybe this is the villain? Maybe the person got first place because they're on some sort of weird Fallout type chems, or those things in the Expanse that the Martians take when they're interrogating people. Whatever it is, let it in. Let it happen. Stop trying to control the story, because when you do that, it's boring. Let the story confuse you. Let it frustrate you. Let it turn you off. Let a character do something that you don't like. And what you'll start to see is there is this pool in your subconscious that has like 900,000 times the creativity and brilliance of what you think it does. But you've been trying to direct it. You've been trying to like spray the honey out of a little nozzle, right? Instead of just like cutting open the bottle and letting it droop about, right? Let this big mess of honey, yuck. Can you imagine how hard that would be to clean? Oh my God, don't actually do that. I believe that there is something more than distracting, passing time, entertainment. I love role playing. I role play in online groups, in-person groups, and I solo play. All of those are extremely enriching, and I don't want to oversell anything. You know, I hate when people do that. Oh, you play tabletop role-playing games, it will double your company's profit. No, it won't. But I do think that there is value in these things that we share. And even when you're doing it by yourself, you are literally fishing in the same river as me. I really believe that. And I think it's good for humankind. And I think more people need to do this. You know, Flannery O'Connor would say that she hated the notion that people would say that fiction is sort of escaping reality. And Flannery O'Connor would say, no. Fiction is diving as deep into reality as is possible. Most people are rejecting reality in one way or another. I mean, you see this all the time, right? And I really do feel safe like saying that to those watching this video, because I really do think that in order to be drawn towards tabletop role playing, especially solo play, there is some piece of you that wants to explore the texture of what your subconscious mind can create. Of course, there are people who are just going to min-max. Of course, there are people who are just not going to get it. There's no shame in that. I'm not judging those people. And I'm also not saying that, oh, you should start doing active imagination every night and you'll become the best solo role player ever. I guess what I'm saying is, there is only right now, okay? And not even in a mindfulness sense of like, sometimes when I'm playing in groups, I'll want the next thing to happen. And I'll catch myself and I'll say, why am I in such a hurry to get to the next thing? As if there's going to be some point in the game in which I get like a gold crown and a lollipop. Every moment of play, and even the time between the games, it's all part of it. It's all part of it. And for that reason, and really what this whole video is about, is I got the advanced player's guide for Symbaroum in the mail yesterday. Oh my God, you guys, there's like these things you can do between sessions to like set up little businesses. I love it. So in conclusion, get Symbaroum. You're going to love it. If you have never read Jung before, I do encourage you to not start with Liber Novus. I encourage you to pick up a copy of Man and His Symbols. Again, it was written in 1961. Jung just finished it before he died. And if you're at all interested in this, and if you have any ideas for blankets and bricks, please comment below. Otherwise, sorry if this wasn't exactly your cup of tea, but thank you nonetheless for indulging me and allowing me to take the mic on that stage with my big purple top hat. I've never been to Mall of America, but I would be interested at some point